Basic and Classic are the two oldest card sets in Hearthstone. Been around since before the game's full release on March 11, 2014. They have been the foundation for all sorts of decks, from beginner to the top decks run by the top players at the top ranks. The thing with the Basic and Classic cards is that over the years, newer cards have been released that are just better or more versatile than their Classic counterparts. So on March 30, 2021, with the release of Hearthstone's 17th expansion, Forged in the Barrens, the Basic and Classic set will be replaced by a new core set, which will be the foundation for all your decks, and it will be for free. So historically, you would be able to get your Basic cards for free and your Classic cards from the Classic packs. Hello, this is Jonius here, and this video is on what to do with your Classic cards.
The end is coming!
Not yet, Doomsayer.
Did I miss it?
Before we talk about all the cards in the Classic set in detail, we need to go through the different formats that you can play ranked in, so you can get an idea of the bigger picture of where the Classic cards fit in. So there's standard format, which is only the core set and the last 2 years of cards can be used. So we have the Year of the Griffin core set with the expansions from the 2020, Ashes of Outland, Skullman's Academy, and Madness at the Darkmoon Fair, with Forged in the Barrens being the first expansion for 2021, as well as the 2 expansions coming later this year, which we don't know much about yet. Wild contains all of these cards on standard, as well as Basic, Classic, and Hall of Fame cards, which will be merging into the Legacy set. You'll be able to get those Classic and Hall of Fame cards from the Classic packs. As well in Wild are the Year of the Dragon sets, and all these older card sets. Now yes, that is a lot of card sets, and that can be overwhelming if you have no idea what any of these older cards do. So I would focus less on these older card sets, and more on the newer ones which you may be familiar with and have some of that are rotating out. Classic format, not to be confused with the Classic card packs or the Classic set, is where you use your Classic cards as they were in 2014. So that is 240 Classic cards and 143 Basic cards in their 2014 versions. And these are also openable from the Classic pack. As you may have noticed, Wild and Classic, you open the card from the same Classic pack. So here comes the note here. To be able to play a card in the Classic format, you need to own the Classic set or Legacy set version for Wild. That means your Classic format copy and your Wild format copy of a card, they count as the same card in your collection. This is really important. So we have an example here with Cenarius being 9 mana in the Classic format, and Cenarius is going to be 8 mana in the Wild format. If you disenchant the Classic version, you will lose the Wild version, even though they look different, but they count as the same card in your collection. Further added to this, Cenarius is also in the core set for the Year of the Griffin, and being in the core set means that the card can be playable in standard and Wild formats. It is a free temporary copy that you don't need to craft or open in packs while the card is in core set. So next year, the core set could change and Cenarius could be out of the core set, which means you want to own the permanent copy, which is this Wild Legacy version that can also be played in Classic mode. There are some cards in the Classic set, despite all the new cards released, that have stood the test of time, such as Unleash the Hounds. But there are other cards that are so bad, such as Kidnapper, that even a basic card, Sap, is more efficient than Kidnapper. You almost have no reason to run this card. So we need a rating system to determine what cards should you keep for your collection, which cards are going to be useful for you, because of how different a card can be in their Classic format version and their Wild version, as well as a core set version. So I'll be going through a 5-point system for rating the cards, which should be 5 points for staple cards. Basically, you always want to keep these, and if you open the card, you keep it. If you ever want to play that class and you may even go out of your way to craft a few if you're missing some as a newer returning player. Then there's force point cards. These are good cards or deck staple cards. These ones you usually keep. They're pretty good for the class, though they're not quite as auto keep or auto craft as the 5-point cards. 3-point cards for the OK cards or the deck supporting cards. They may not be the most competitively efficient cards, but keeping these cards in your collection will give you more options to experiment and deck build. And then for 2 points is niche or casual cards. This is 2 categories put into the 2 points. So there's casual cards, for example, Sylvan Hand Knight. This is the card where it's like if you have a limited classic collection, you don't have many options, you can put it in your decks and you do fine with it. But as you grow your collection and you have other cards you open, you'll find that you don't really need the Sylvan Hand Knight and you'll rarely play it. So that is the definition of what I would say is a casual card. And then the other category would be cards like Lork or Cho, which has a unique effect, but the card is not competitively viable at all. It's just for fun or for memes. So meme cards are also in this category, and usually you consider dusting these if you don't care about these type of cards. And then at 1 point, we've got the basically the trash or the dust cards. Basically, there is no reason to keep these if you're not a completionist. If you don't like keeping cards, because they are just better options. You could even go out of your way to get a Valspine Slayer instead of a Kidnapper. So these cards are always dust. The card images you'll be seeing are shown before the upcoming changes because there are a lot of changes coming. The cards with the Griffin symbol will be in the core set for the upcoming year. So we can put that on scenarios. He'll be in the core set. Cards with the buff symbol, they're cards being buffed or being stronger. So either they're being reduced in mana cost or given more health or more attack, something like that. And they'll be available for the wild and core set if they have that core set Griffin icon as well. So we can put that on scenarios. And the cards with the classic format symbol, these are cards that were stronger in the past and then they got nerfed. And so in the classic format, as they were in 2014, they'll be reverted, they'll be stronger. So that also changes how you value the card for your collection. So I would say for nearly everyone who has played Hearthstone a little bit, you will have some sort of classic collection. Try out classic mode, see if you like it. You probably have some good cards already to try out decks of your own. You also have all the basic cards to play with. And if you find that you don't like classic but you play wild, you can subtract 1 or 2 to the card ratings. If this card's been buffed, you can add +1 to the rating. And if a card is like a core set card and you're not concerned about permanently keeping a card for the longer term, then you can subtract 1 from the rating. So Druid, onto Druid. 5-point cards, I would say, would be Power the Wild and Soul the Forest. These cards have always been a staple choice for any sort of token strategy or a Druid deck that goes for a wide board strategy, a swarm strategy, and these 2 cards have always been good. So keep those. 4-point cards. So we have Wrath. Not quite as good in Wild as it used to be, but is still a good option whenever you are looking for removal and card draw in a single card, being able to choose from either one, and would be better in classic format. Keep of the Grove will be buffed again or reverted back to its original 2-4 stats. It will have 4 health. This card was pretty good in classic back in the day. I could see it being a keep. Course of Nature will be 6 mana and give 3 treants with charge that die at the end of turn. This is a key combo with Savage Roar, so I would say this is high priority for Classic. Nourish will be 5 mana in the Classic format as a 6 mana card, also in the core set. And for Wild, it is a little slow, but it is still an option for ramp, though you do have more efficient cards like Overgrowth. But this card can be used, for example, with the Druid quest or just as another option for ramp card in your deck. And it still sees play. Naturalized, this is originally from Hall of Fame. In classic format, probably not as good since card advantage is more important. But in wild, any mill druid deck runs this. This is a key card, so definite good keep. And the OK cards. So we have Starfall, 2 damage AoE across the whole enemy board. It's an option. It's not always been the most efficient card, but being able to choose, again, there's a benefit there. Ancient Allure will be buffed back to its original draw 2 cards or restore 5 health. And that will be the same in classic format. So I can see this card being a good option for control or slower druid decks. Then there's Cenarius being buffed to 8 mana. I can see this being a decent option. I don't know if it will stick around as being a competitively viable card, but it is not a bad card at all. So we have 2 points and 1 point for these cards. We have Ancient of War, is basically just stats for 7 mana, nothing special. Mark of Nature, nothing really special as a minion buffer. Bite and Savagery are both very inefficient cards. There are many other options in Wild to use, and they've never been that good for Classic. Hunter. So we have a couple here. We have Explosive Trap and Freezing Trap, 2 key staples for Hunter secrets that have stood the test of time. Being able to clear your opponent's board, deal 2 damage to their board when they attack your face. Such a key card. And Freezing Trap also as well. Just getting value from putting your opponent's big minion back into their hand. Any secret deck Hunter, keep. Unleash the Hounds stood the test of time. It can be a finisher. It can be a board removal or board control tool. It can just be a board threat that does damage the turn you play it. It is so good in all formats, I would say. You would find it putting it in all sorts of decks. Then we got the 4-point card, Scavenging Hyena. This card should be pretty good in Classic. In Wild and even Standard, it has fallen out. It's actually not as good as it used to be. But this combo with Unleash the Hounds is basically what you're looking for as your main way to get this hyena to huge proportions. Like, if you get this hyena big, you can basically win the game off that. Snake Trap has always been a decent secret as an option for padding out your secrets in your deck. Snake Trap is good as a one-off. Deadly Shot, good removal. If you're just lacking removal cards in your collection, this can help make up for that. In more recent years, there have been cards like Rotnest Drake that provide a minion as well as destroying around the enemy minion, so this card is a little less must-have, but it's still a decent option for deck building. Savannah Highmane, the nickname is for Savannah Highmane is a little joke where you would call the Savannah Highmane the Hunter Legendary. All you have to do is just have 2 copies of Savannah Highmane, the Hunter Legendary, put it in your deck because it was just that good. Now these days, probably not so much, but it will still be a good option for Classics, so I can see that being a good card to keep. Eagle Horn Bow. This card will be different in Classic. It will say whenever any secret is revealed. So if your opponent plays a secret, your Eagle Horn Bow gets an extra durability. So always been a good weapon. There are more options in Wild and Standard these days for Hunter weapons, but is the original Classic Hunter weapon has never been bad to say, and that's why I would rate it 4 points. So for the OK cards, we have Bestial Wrath. This could be a 2, but because in Classic format, it will say give any beast +2 attack and immune. You have this interesting interaction where you can target your enemy's beast that has taunt, and you'll bypass the taunt, and you can just go through it. So that is like a tech option. In Wild, there's more options to like buffing up a beast up to big attack for some combos, but otherwise this could be a 2. But I would say hold on to it for a little bit. We don't know what's going to happen. Flare has always been like a tech card, being able to draw card for 2 mana and destroying your enemy secrets. Flare will also cost 1 mana, which helps increase the competitive efficiency of this card. So I could see that being okay. Also, I should mention that you see most of the good cards are going to be in the core set for free. So put that into consideration for whether you want to keep the permanent copy of these cards. Mech cards, we got Misdirection, one of the weakest secrets, can kind of surprise your opponent because no one's expecting it, but usually randomly generate this rather than actually putting it in your deck, so not so much of a good keep. There's Explosive Shots, pretty slow hunter removal, and then there's Gladiator's Longbow, where, yeah, if you have a limited collection, you can put this in your deck. I remember putting this in one of my free-to-play series or How to Survive series, and it did okay, but otherwise 7 mana is a lot to pay for this type of weapon, so there's that. For Mage, we have a couple here. We have Sorcerer's Apprentice. Has enabled all sorts of mage decks, especially ones with lots of cheap spells. There's a key combo with Apprentice and Archmage Antonidas for Exodia Mage, which allows you to cast fireballs for 0 mana constantly as a win condition, and Sorcerer's Apprentice enables that. Basically, like Cyclone Mage or like Chambala Mage, with anything that wants you to reduce cost of spells. Quest Mage, Sorcerer's Apprentice has always been there, so 100% keep. Blizzard, these days they are potentially more versatile board quiz. For example, Rolling Fireball, doing 2 damage and freezing enemies may not always be the best option, but it's still a good board quiz, so I would keep that. Mana Worm is getting half buffed or like changed. It'll be a 1 mana 1/2 now. So I can see that, seeing some experimentation in Wild. And in Classic, it'll be a 1 mana 1/3. And that was a staple key card for any Tempo Mage deck, right along with Sorcerer's Apprentice. So definite keep for Classic format. 4-point cards, we have Counterspell. Counterspell's one of the key Mage secrets. Being able to counter any big spell that your opponent wants to play. Your opponent has to play around this. Can be quite annoying for them. There's always been an option for any secrets that you want to put in your deck. That's Counterspell for you. And Mirror Entity, not so much these days, but I'd say this in Classic format is going to be pretty decent since there's less ways to remove minions. Definitely a good choice for Classic, less so in Wild and Standard, but we see that in the core set. And what better way to play secrets for free than Kirin Tormage? Being able to play next secret for 0 while having a 4/3 on the board. Key card for any secret mage deck across all formats. Just a good one to have. We have Archmage Antonidas, which I said before enables the win condition of being able to play fireballs for free, but not even that. He'd be a late game threat your opponent has to remove on the next turn. So I'd see this be good in Classic format, maybe more niche in other formats. Ice Lance is combo cards for like the old Freeze Mage archetype, where you Alex charges your opponent's face, and the next turn you would go Frostbolt, like Fireball and Ice Lance for like 20 damage to your opponent's face, so then that's like lethal. Ice Lance was a key card for that. Otherwise, in Wild, probably not so much. Let's go to the OK cards. We have Ice Barrier. Ice Barrier has always been an OK secret. Definitely a better choice against aggressive decks. In Wild, you have Ice Block, which is probably more life-saving, versatile than Ice Barrier. Otherwise, this has seen play in the most recent Standard rotation. Okay, we have Cone of Cold, which is getting buffed to 3 mana. So this being a board freeze competing with Frost Nova, which will no longer be in the core set and standard. We can see this being okay. I wouldn't say it'd be super good or anything, but if you need a board freeze, then it would be kind of cold. If you're an Arcanist, so this basically combos with the secret Mage identity, being able to have 5/5 a turn you play it. I don't see this being super strong in Classic. In Wild and Standard format, you had the 4-mana Mage card, Occult Conjurer, which basically summons 2 4/4s, and that is just better than this Arcanist that slowly grows. So yeah, but it would be okay if you have no other option. Pyroblast, 10 mana, mostly inefficient damage because you're paying a lot for this 10 damage, but it is 10 damage. It's a lot. It's definitely playable in some sense, but nothing spectacular. For 2-point cards, we have Spellbender and Vaporize. These two are weaker secrets. If you randomly generate these are okay, but putting these in your deck proper, maybe Spellbender 1 copy, but you're rarely doing that. If you're looking for efficient secrets, you have other options. So for Paladin, the only 5-point card I would say is Equality, and that's because it is getting buffed. It's getting buffed to 3 mana. Oh, are you buffing odd Paladins now, giving them that option? In Classic, it'll be even better, being at 2 mana. So this allows you to combo with Consecration for 6 mana board clear. So I'd say this is a key card for Classic format. 4 points, we have Tyrian Forging. Has always been a decent late game legendary. Even in Wild, you can use Duel, play this in Duel Paladin, and Tyrian would be one of those big minions. It is also in the core set, so you get this for free. We have Outdoor Peacekeeper. I'd say this is better in Classic, but being able to just like neutralize one of your opponent's threats down to 1 attack, meaning your other minions can attack into it without dying. Yeah, it's never bad. So that's a good keep. Divine Favor, basically very strong card draw for any more aggressive Paladin deck that's just running out of cards in their hand, right? You're low on cards, you have Divine Favor in your hand, you can just refill your hand if your opponent still has lots of their cards. Definitely a good one for card draw. For okay cards, you've got Blessing and Wisdom. Card draw on a minion. Has seen some play. Thing with Paladin's Classic set is there's a bunch of secrets and none of them are that strong. So Noble Sack is probably the best one because it allows you to divert an opponent's attacking minion into a 2/1 and you get it for free in the core set. Redemption has been okay, being able to resummon your minion back for 1 health. Your opponent's not expecting it. They kill one of your minions. This comes back. And if your minion has a lot of like extra effects like Reborn or Taunt, Divine Shield, it comes back with that Divine Shield. Archer Protector is getting buffed to a 3/2, being in the core set. This could be okay. I wouldn't say it's super great, but being able to give one of your minions Divine Shield to trade in, and you get a 3/2 as well, being on curve stats. Yep, I'd say that's it's not bad. It's not terrible. Avenging Wrath, bit of a slower board damage, like damaging, can clear some small minions on your opponent's board, or this can just go all face as a finisher. So it's okay, but it's not like a super must craft or anything. And then Lay of Hands, draw and restore 8 health to yourself or 8 health to a minion. Any controlled Paladin deck for Classic format will likely have one of these. So I'd say that's okay. Then we have the casual, the niche cards. Repentance, the value you get from your opponent trying to play a minion and reducing to 1 is fairly inconsistent. Your opponent can play around this. So while it may be fine to randomly generate this from other cards, if you're putting it in your deck, it's probably not the best choice. We have Blessed Champion and Holy Wrath. Holy Wrath has limited combo potential with Shivala because Shivala is a 25 cost card, you can Holy Rash Shavala to deal 25 damage to your opponent's face. That is the most potent combo for Holy Wrath. Otherwise, drawing a card for 5 mana and just doing some damage doesn't seem very good. There's other card draw options. Western Champion, same thing, probably even less combo reliant. But like, if you did happen to stick a minion on the board and then buff it up and then double the minion's attack, this is the card. But it is 5 mana as well, so there's not that much of a case there. But it does enable that sort of niche potential. Sword of Justice, nothing too special, giving 5 minions +1/+1. You could even just run the side quest, and that's not even super great, but hey, this can enable some fun stuff. I can see putting this in with Recurring Villain to immediately buff it up to 4 attacks so it gets resummoned, and that would be a use there. Otherwise, this card, if you're competitively focused, you have no reason to have this. Eye for an Eye, the weakest secret in Classic format. You're just doing damage to your opponent. I don't see much use for that. Then you've got Priest, so you've got a couple here. I'd say Organized Circle is only 5 points here because of how potent this 4 damage AoE clear is in Classic format. In other formats, there are probably more efficient options. Like, we can start with Breath of the Infinite, Hysteria being a board clear. But I'd say in Classic format, it's more keepable. Also, Circle Healing is good by itself as a 0 mana cycle for Gadgets and Auctioneer. And Organized Soul Priest by itself, being able to use your hero power to deal 2 damage. That's always something. Inner Fire, key win condition in Classic format. And throughout Hearthstone's history, has been a key win condition along with Divine Spirit. Definite collection staple. So then we have a couple of 4-point cards. Master Spell has always been good as a one-of tech card for bypassing your opponent's board. Sometimes you could even run 2, but I don't see that too often. Cabal Shadow Priest has never been a bad card per se, but being able to take control of any minion that has 2 or less attack while putting a 4/5 on the board, this could be pretty good for Classic format. You do have Cabal Acolyte, which is a newer alternative that does the same effect. You have Fort Steel, which used to be 3 mana, so it'll be 3 mana in the Classic format. Being at 2 mana, it's always been an option to get some value, like for that sort of stealing priest archetype. For the OK cards, we have Shadow Madness. I know we put this at 4. This might be a 4, but the fact that it is 4 mana in the Classic format, so that's can be quite expensive. But being able to steal your opponent's minion, have it attack into one of your other opponent's minions, that's basically a 2-for-1. You can basically kill 2 of your opponent's minions for 1 card. Temple Enforcer will be a 6 mana card in Classic format. I'd say this is okay, it's nothing special. Holy Fire, never been the most efficient of cards. Could be slightly better in a control priest deck for Classic. Shadowfall will be buffed to a 2 mana card for the core set. Silence at 0 mana is okay, it's nothing particularly special to put in your deck, usually to discover this card. Prophet Velen enables the OTK archetype with Mind Blast and Holy Smite. The thing is, Holy Smite only deals face damage in the Classic format. In Wild and in Standard, it does 3 damage to a minion. It does not go face. So you only have Mind Blast really to combo. But even then, you can still potentially discover multiple copies of Mind Blast to double the damage of the Mind Blast for that Velen OTK deck. So it is a key card for that sort of deck. Otherwise, you don't see that much play. You could get some use with your hero power, but I would still say it's an okay keep for Classic format. Mind Games, bit of a meme card. Putting a copy of a random minion from your opponent's deck can be very unreliable. Can be like a tiny minion for 4 mana, or it could be a huge one, but it's inconsistent. Bit of a fun card. Lightspawn is getting buffed to a 3 mana 0/4 instead of a 0/5. And it'll be in the core set. And Nightwell, pretty weak card. A 0 attack minion that only restores 3 health, like you have to wait a turn, is never been that good. For Rogue, Rogue has historically had a strong classic set. We have a couple of core staples here. Eviscerate, being able to deal up to 4 damage on the combo. This can go face, this can remove minions, bypass your enemy minions, be a combo for like Malygos rogue decks for damage. Always keep. It won't be in the core set though, so that's something, but I'd say it's still good. Shadow Step. This is a key card that shapes the identity of Rogue, being able to return a friendly minion, playing it for 2 less, getting it the effect again. It has enabled so many decks over the years, and it will be in the core set, and definitely keep for long term. Preparation, in Classic, it will be your next spell you cast this turn costs 3 less. This enables the Miracle Rogue archetype as well with the Shadow Step. You can go prep into Vanish for 3 mana as a board clear of sorts. Remove your opponent's board to their hand, and this is a key card, and you'll be getting this for free as well. So then, for the 4-point cards, SI7 Agent, this would be almost be a 5, probably be a 5 in Classic format, but it's a 4 now because there's so many good cards at 3 mana. A 3 cost slot is very crowded for Rogue. Yeah, it's not your only option there, but if you happen to have it, it has always been an option to put in your deck. And then we have Edwin. Edwin will be getting reverted back to 3 mana as it recently got nerfed because it was basically too powerful in standard. So it'll be going back to 3 mana once it's in wild, and same in classic format. It's been like a reward for playing lots of cards in one turn, as Rogue can do, especially with like Shadow Step and Prep. So you can get a huge Edwin minion. While it has never been completely essential to play Rogue, it has always been a good option for that sort of deck that allows it to play a lot of cards in one turn. For okay cards, we have Betrayal. Probably more okay in classic format than anything else. They are just more efficient ways for Rogue to deal with stuff. So many different ways, like you could even just say Rush. So many damage removal with lackeys and everything. But this would be okay, at least in classic format. Cold Blood will be 1 mana in classic as a key card for a Leroy Cold Blood combo with Shadow Step for a lot of charge damage. So definitely a good keep. But at 2 mana, it's not so good in the other formats. But you see it in the core set, so we'll see how it goes. Perdition's Blade, this one's a bit tricky. I almost put this one at 2. It's at 3 because potentially in the classic format, you could use this as a one-off. You could even put this in a Highlander deck for Rogue as a weapon option. Otherwise, this card, you're not always like searching for this type of card, but it's never that bad. Blade Flurry will be being buffed to a 2 mana card, but it won't go face. The original card said destroy your minion and deal its damage to all enemies. So if you had a huge weapon with high attack, that's just a crazy extra face damage. So that's for classic format, could be pretty good. At 2 mana, we'll see. It is a board clear for Rogue, so that is something to look out for. For the 2-point cards, Defiance Ringleader. Maybe if you're playing a tempo strategy, this could be okay-ish. Otherwise, there's many 2-drops these days that having 2/2 and a 2/1 is nothing particularly special. Though I do remember playing this in like an even Rogue. There is Patient Assassin getting buffed to a 1 mana 1/2 with Stealth and Poisonous. We'll see how that turns out. Headcrack being at 3 mana to deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. Has to be a combo to return. This is just so much mana costed. I mean, it enables memes. It's kind of a meme fun card, but nothing outside that. Master of Disguise in classic format will give a friendly minion stealth permanently. Not until your next turn, but permanently. That's why it's a 2, otherwise there's no reason to use this card. Kidnapper as a 1, just run Sap or Vile Spine Slayer. It's bad stats and it's 6 mana. And you don't even kill the minion, right? That's the craziest part about this card. Even at 5 mana, it might not even be that good. Shaman, the only 5-point card I would say in the classic set would be Mana-Tide Totem. Any totem deck, you can use Mana-Tide Totem. It's always been an option. It's a decent option in control or slower Shaman decks. And yeah, you can buff this up with Totemic Reflection. You just draw a lot of cards. You just want that as an option for deck building. For 4 points, Lightning Storm getting buffed to a doing 3 damage to all enemy minions. Nowadays, you do have different options. You have, like, the Overload 2 kind of hurts a little bit, but it is a cheap board clear. If you're missing the other board clears, this is an option in your deck. Earthshock, 1 mana silence, never bad. Lightning Bolt, dealing 3 damage, along with Lava Burst, dealing 5 damage, both with some Overload, but these two would feel any aggressive Shaman archetype, so that's a lot of damage, as well as Doomhammer. This would be the key weapon. You play this with Rockbiter weapon, you have a 5 attack weapon that can attack twice in a turn, and that's a lot of damage for a burn Shaman deck. These are the key cards. They have always been good for that sort of deck. Farsight is always been good card draw for control decks. It should still be decent. Alakir is getting buffed to a 3/6, so I'd say that makes it at least okay, and I put it in the good tier because it is a late game finisher, having Charge and Wind Fury. 3-point cards, Stormforge stacks, nothing spectacular, but it is a weapon, and weapons can come in handy for controlling the board. Unbound Elemental, nothing special or competitively efficient, but just synergizing with Shaman's Overload theme and getting a big minion can thicken the board. Ancestral Spirit, you put this on a big minion, being able to resummon it again. It is one of the options for big Shaman or like a big Shaman deck. Then you have 2-point cards. Earth Elemental getting buffed, it will have Overload 2 instead. So you don't get punished too much by playing this card. Otherwise, it's just big minions for stats and nothing else really. Forked Lightning, the 1 mana, like Overload 2 really hurts this card. Doing 2 damage to 2 random enemy minions is not great when you have other options like Maelstrom Portal and what's the other one? Landslide. Dust Devil is basically dust because you're never really running this. The 2 Overload hurts it a lot as well. So Warlock has a couple of good cards, and I also have a couple of really bad cards, but the good cards, the Flame Imp is the strongest 1 mana card at, like, for the stats, being 3/2, 1 mana 3/2. Has been key for any sort of demon or zoo Warlock deck. You always keep this card. Doomguard in the Hall of Fame, being able to have charge on a 5/7 is almost like a Leroy, but it's a rare card and has some discard synergies. Discarding 2 cards, very good. Good stats. Twisting Never has always been an option for control decks, even these days, of many other board quiz, Dark Skies, Cascading Disaster, whatever. Twisting Never has always been there in that as that option. So you have this card, you wait a minute. This is not in the core set. It should be. So Twisting Never, key board clear, and it's in the core set. 4-point cards, we have Siphon Soul getting buffed to 5 mana, being able to destroy a minion and heal yourself. If the meta is not too like aggro sworn dependent, this is a good card. Shadow Flame, board clear, at the cost of destroying your own minion, but you get to decide basically how big the board clear can be if you have the right minion. So that's always a good option. Power Overwhelming, give a minion +4 force pull and it dies at the end of turn. There's many different combos with this. Combo this with Leroy, combo this just as a bigger minion for your Shadow Flame, all sorts of things. If you get into Wild, you eventually have use for this card, but it's probably be better in Classic format. 3-point cards, Demon Fire is a minion buffer if you give it to a demon. Otherwise, it's just okay. Since demons, drawing 2 demons from your deck, it's been okay. It's been run. These days, you have free emission. That does this, basically the same thing, but has a potential upside. So since demons is kind of a bit left out in that sense. Void Terror is getting buffed. It'll be a 3/4. I could see this working even with Power Overwhelming, right? You buff a minion, it's gonna die. You get the value out of this minion by attacking or whatever, and then you just eat it up with Void Terror. So we'll see how it goes. It's gonna be in the core set. For 2-point cards, Bane of Doom. In Classic format, the pool of demons will be a lot less, so you could get a big demon from this. You could also get a Blood Imp from Bane of Doom, which would feel pretty bad. Never been that great of a card, but hey, maybe roll your luck. You can get a Void Lord or a Dreadlord or something. Summoning Portal, only used for really the memeiest of decks. There is being able to play minions for cheap. Otherwise, you're not really running this without a clear strategy for Summoning Portal. Then for the 1-point cards, Blood Imp, it's not very good. Being a 0/1 and you're just basically buffing a minion by 1 health. Even though it has stealth, you have Felguard. 3 mana for a 3/5 taunt might seem good, but destroying one of your mana crystals is so hurtful for you in like anything that's not endgame, like in the mid game. You just lose out so much by destroying one of your own mana crystals this way. And Pit Lord, 4 mana 5/6, dealing 5 damage to your hero. The big stats, it's often not worth this big hit, but if you do have no other option, you could just run it. And for Warrior, we have Brawl, the key classic staple board clear that has stood the test of time and will continue to be, being in the core set, so you get 2 for free. I cannot believe how long it took for me to get 2 Brawls, and now you get it for free, which is great. Allows you to build control warrior decks right off the bat. Battle Rage, versatile card draw in the classic set. Damage all your minions, draw 5 or 6 cards. Battle Rage is a key card, so that's always a keep. Armorsmith, very good. Armor gain in the classic set has pretty much almost stood the test of time. I'd say relies a little bit more on your minions taking damage, so there's that, and it's in the core set. Upgrade, being able to buff your weapon. So never been that bad. It's not always been the most prominent weapon buffing option. So that's what's 4 points. Shield Slam, it's like Brawl. It is like a key control tool. I'd say it's pretty good. And now you get this for free in the core set. Frothing Berserker, gonna be better in the classic format, I'd say, with less minion removal. Anytime a minion takes damage, so including enemy minions, this gets buffed up the attack up to huge proportions. With Warsong Commander, this card can be very good. Inner Rage enables any minion to be damaged and gets buff +2 attack. Combo this with Grom, and that's +12. So that can be quite good. So there's Grom there. I'd say it's okay. It's almost a good card, I'd say. But you have it in the core set. Gorehowl, control tool for classic format. In Wild, you're not really running this card. You have plenty of other options. Like I'd say Super Collider is better than this, but it's going to be key control tool for controlling the board in classic. Cruel Taskmaster, basically that same effect of dealing 1 damage to a minion, give it +2 attack, but on a minion, I'd say that's okay. Slam, being able to deal 2 damage to a minion and draw a card if it survives. That is always a key card draw option, along with Shield Block. And then for 2-point cards, we have Mortal Strike. Are you trying to use this as a finisher in your aggressive warrior deck? But how often are you getting down to 12 health? as an aggressive deck. And yeah, this is like I've run it before, but it's nothing special. Roughly Weaponsmith, you have Sword Eater now in the newer cards, but this could be okay in Classic. So that's why I give it a 2. Commanding Shout, it is a card draw, but not really. Well, why would you run this when you have Battle Rage? And you can set up your Battle Rage and shield block better. But if it helps you control the board, sure. Rampage, really only used as a combo card for like getting a big damage minion up. For example, there's a Worgen OTK deck running around, and Rampage is a part of this. But otherwise, nothing too special. So now we go to the neutrals. There are quite a few good ones, but there are a lot of underwhelming neutral cards in the classic set. So we'll go with the staples. We have Loot Hoarder, always been good card draw on a Death Rattle. You have synergies for resummoning Death Rattle minions. Loot Hoarder is there as a 2-1 in the core set as well. Southsea Deckhand. Any pirate deck, aggressive pirate deck, Southsea Deckhand has always been in that pirate deck. I don't think there's any exception. Especially if it has weapons, right? Like if you're a rogue or warrior. Rogue or warrior pirate deck, you always have Southsea Deckhand being able to have charge on it. So you can immediately attack a minion or attack face. Always keep. Doomsayer, this is the classic OG control tool in the early game. Being at 7 health, it's not that easy for your opponent to remove. It stalls a turn because your opponent can't develop the board, and then your Doomsayer goes off, and then you have your turn to develop board. Basically get a board reset with Doomsayer. And there's a little bit of skill, and depending on when you play it, you can play it on a turn when you think your opponent's gonna have their huge turn or play a really important card. You play Doomsayer, and you stall your opponent a bit. So that is a key card. It's always been a key card for any control deck, but it's not going to be in the core set. So we have a lot of forwards here. Business Sergeant will be a 2-1 in classic format. Most likely will be a key aggressive card to put in decks there. Arden's Glow should be a decent minion in classic format. Bloodsail Corsair, bit of a small weapon tech. Being 1 of durability from your opponent's weapon, has seen play in all sorts of aggressive decks because it is able to draw patches, being a pirate. So that is a good keep. Light Warden has seen play in like combo priest decks in the past. Murloc Tidecaller, a key turn 1 play for Murloc decks. Whenever you're summoning more Murlocs, it gains +1 attack, so this can become a huge threat. Secret Keeper, secret decks. This might even be a 3-point card though, because secrets cannot always be the most reliable to play. It also does not get buffed if a secret gets cast instead of played. Notice the wording, it has to be played. So then we have Worgen Infiltrator, being a 1-mana card with stealth, even though it is worse than the rogue version, which is a 3-1. Both versions are still run in the same deck, so that is why that's there. Mage Thalnos, good card to have in your collection. Over time, I wouldn't say it's the highest priority to just craft, but any spell damage combo deck that also likes to draw a lot of cards quickly likes this card, likes Thalnos, because it fits both. So that's why Thalnos has always been a decent option, and it's in the core set as well. Bloodsail Raider, a key 2-mana pirate that synergizes with weapons. Good one. Direwolf Alpha, being able to buff adjacent minions +1 attack. This is essentially 4 attack worth of minion. Being a beast has never been a bad card, and is always an option for like Druid or Hunter or anything like that. Knife Juggler is getting buffed to a 3-2. In classic format, it will also be a 3-2. We shall see how good this card will be. It's always been a decent option for summoning a lot of small minions, like with Warlock. Warlock loves to have Knife Juggler as an option. For OK cards, we have Hungry Crab, tech option against Murloc decks. Definitely a good keep for those Tavern Brawls. It's either like a Tavern Brawl that has all minions being all types. Hungry Crab is always a keep for that type of Tavern Brawl. Lephanome is going to get buffed to a 2-1. Oh man, this could actually be a 4-point card. We'll see. It's 2-1 in classic format as well. Key for just dealing face damage, right? Amani Berserker, 2 mana 2/3, that also can go to 5 attack. Better in classic format than other formats, but being a good 2 mana minion means you can put it in your deck. Ancient Watcher, more so for silence decks because of its big stats, but it can't attack. If you silence this, it can suddenly start attacking. Crazy Alchemist, this is tech for a card like Doomsayer. Flip the Doomsayer over, it has 0 health, it dies. Otherwise, this card is probably nothing that special, but it's always a option to enable certain combos in your collection for any flipping over any sort of minion that you want. Fairy Dragon, cheap dragon option. Used to be pretty good. I'd say it's pretty good in classic set, but not being able to have it targeted, but because of there's so many different rush cards now, yeah, dragon's not that special. Mad Bomber, being in the core set is going to be interesting. I'd say this is still an okay to keep. The RNG nature of it, like the random nature of where these 3 damage randomly goes, can be annoying, but hey, you can actually remove like a 1 health minion from your opponent. That's good enough. For the 2-point cards, we have Wisp. Has seen play as a cheap enabler for certain types of things, but they are the 0 mana 1/1s that are cuter, so Wisp doesn't get priority there. Shield Bearer as a 0/4. I only put this as a 2 because it has Taunt, so there's a niche use where you can buff this up using Into the Fray and such. Otherwise, this card is just an example of a bad card. Young Dragonhawk, 1 mana 1/1 with Wind Fury and a Beast. So yeah, there's a case to buff this up to being a really big minion, and then you give it charge with like a Tundra Rhino for combo. Otherwise, this is a pretty bad card. Young Priestess, being able to give a friendly minion health at the end of your turn. It's not like uber trash, but it's not great either. The Orchid Show has that meme unique effect, useful for friendly matches or shenanigans. Otherwise, it's not competitive at all. So for the second page, Wild Pyro and Questing Adventurer. Wild Pyro being a key neutral board clear with cheap spells. Your deck running lots of cheap spells. Wild Pyro is basically a board clear. Most useful in Priest because he can heal the Pyro to continue to deal 1 damage to all minions. Questing Adventurer, most prominent in Rogue because they can play lots of cheap cards on the same turn. You get this big, this is a key win condition. You always keep this as a collection option. Coalite Seer, this in Classic will say give all Murlocs plus 2 health. So it'll buff your enemy Murlocs as well. So that's something to note, but this is a key win condition for Murloc decks. You have your Murlocs at low health, and maybe your opponent wants to clear them, but then you put a Coalite Seer and boom, they suddenly can't clear your board, and you can win off that. So that's a key card. Similar thing with War Leader. War Leader will actually be even stronger than it is now in the classic format. It will give Murlocs plus 1 health as long as War Leader is on the board. This is like more like an aura. It's not a buff like Coalite Seer, but that plus 2 attack and the plus 1 health classic. It's basically why you run Murloc decks. And being an epic, it's not like that cheap, but it has always been a key card for Murloc decks. For the OK cards, we have Jungle Panther, 4/2 Beast with Stealth, nothing particularly special. It's like okay to run if you don't have any other options, but there are many 3-cost beasts these days. Iron Beak Owl is going to be a 2 mana card in Classic. This could actually be a 4-star in Classic, but otherwise it's pretty expensive for the stats at 3 mana for Silence. Ancient Blademaster being a 4/7, but it deals 4 damage to himself as a 4/3. So this is why you have Circle of Healing in Priest. You play Ancient Blademaster, Circle of Healing, and that's a 4/7. So I can see that being pretty good in Classic. Imp Master, dealing damage to itself. I'd say this is okay in Classic, not so good elsewhere. But you get it over time, you get a bunch of 1/1 imps, help get the board. Harvest Golem, a 2/3 that summons a 2/1, could be okay in Classic. In Wild, you have Snip Snap, which is basically a better version of Harvest Golem because it summons 2 1/1s and it's also more flexible. Flesh Eating Ghoul, getting buffed. I believe it's going to a 3/3 and being in the core set. So you can see that this Flesh Eating Ghoul will benefit Swarm decks, but I'm not sure how consistent this will be. Will your Flesh Eating Ghoul just die before you're able to attack with it? But the benefit is that it will start its re-attack. Urn Ring Farseer, neutral heal. It's been okay card, but they are other heals these days for the newer sets. Firstly, like you would say, Shroom Brewer is a 4-mana version, and that has seen play in the past. Arcane Golem, this one is interesting. This one might actually become a 4 or 5-star card because it is getting reverted to a 4/2 with charge. A 4/2 with charge in classic format and in Wild. So this makes it like 2 mana cheaper than Leroy and 1 more attack than a Wolf Rider for charge. And in that case, you don't really care about giving your opponent a mana crystal. So I'd say this is one card to watch out for. Youthful Brewmaster, the classic return friendly minion from the battlefield to your hand, like a Shadow Step from Rogue, but it is a 2-mana card, a little bit slower, but it is the better of the 2 cards in Classic that returns a friendly minion. There's a 4-mana version, which we'll get to. And then 2-point cards, Mana Addict, playing spells, or like getting +2 attack this turn, not permanently, nothing special. Millhouse Mana Storm, the only reason this card is not 1 point is because of Call to Arms in Paladin. As the only reason. Otherwise, I would put this at 1. Because this is a 2-mana 4/4, it's best stats for a 2-mana card. So you recruit it with Call to Arms. Otherwise, it's a terrible card that can lose you the game. You play this, your opponent plays some huge spells for the same turn. There's meme videos for it. Pine-Sized Summoner, you might think this is a good card. First minion you play each turn can cost 1 less. Sometimes you're able to get a discount. But being at 2 health, this card could get removed pretty easily. And then your benefit is not very useful. Llama Bot, pretty memey as well. Like, maybe you can confuse your opponent. Like, try and bluff and think, oh, maybe I could have a big minion in my hand. And your opponent can't decide whether to kill the Llama Bot or not. Otherwise, it's not too good, but it's a fun card. Blood Knight, how often are you running this card? You can be running a Divine Shield Paladin deck. You get the huge benefit, and then you just consume your own Divine Shields, and you get a 15/15. Outside of that, it's pretty much of a tech card, I wouldn't say. You basically have to run this card and expect Paladin decks or something. Because otherwise, you're running a card that's a 3/3 that doesn't do anything. You usually want cards in your deck to do something. So Cobra, 3-mana 2/3 beast with poisonous, nothing special, no taunt on it, nothing like that. And then there's Mukla. So Mukla has some mill potential. So you could fill your opponent's hand and force them to overdraw a card. But if you're playing Warlock, there are other options. There's like Gnome-Feratu, there's so many options besides Mukla. But it is the biggest beast for 3 mana. It has that going for it. Oh, the 1-point cards. Mana Wraith. You're playing this to make your opponent's minions more expensive, not your own minions. And being on 2/2, I wouldn't say it's a very good benefit. Master Swordsmith. So you basically have to wait each turn to give one of your minions +1 attack. Not that good. Demolisher. Very casual card. You're waiting until the next turn to deal 2 damage to a random enemy. Not very consistent. While it is a mech, you have better, more efficient mechs. You don't need Demolisher unless you want to run it for the memes. Nat Pagel, and this is a true 1-star legendary, unfortunately. In beta, you'll have 50% to draw a card at the end of your turn, and that was actually really good, but then they changed it to at the start of your turn. So you had to wait a whole turn, and maybe you only had 50% to draw an extra card. You can just run Novice Engineer or Loot Hoarder for guaranteed card draw. On the third page for neutrals, we have Twilight Drake. So this card can be as good or even better than a Chillwind Yeti for stats. benefiting more control-y or slow decks that keep all their cards in their hand. So this can be a 4/10. Good stats. Dread Corsair, being able to reduce this cost depending on the attack of your weapon. You have a 4 or 5 attack weapon. This is 0 mana. 3/3 with Taunt. Good option. Southsea Captain is that key card to buff all your other pirates +1/+1. The same way a Murloc War Leader would do. And I'll rate this one 5 stars because pirate decks still historically been good and are still good. For the 4-point cards, Cult Master, probably better in Classic than other formats, but playing a deck with lots of small minions, being able to draw extra cards helps that aggressive game plan. Dark Iron Dwarf, I'd say this is better in Classic format, and it will be a key card to keep because being able to give a minion +2 attack while also developing a 4/4 is good minion trading value for Classic. Big Game Hunter is getting buffed to a 4 mana card. In Classic format, it'll be a 3 mana card. And when it was at 3 mana, it was run in every control deck, like in the early days. So I can see this card being a good card to keep. Vault Teacher, key token creator with decks with lots of cheat spells. Mostly in like a Druid deck, you run this, you play a bunch of spells, then you buff it up with like Power of the Wild or Mark of the Lotus. Defender of Argus is getting buffed to a 3/3, giving adjacent minions +1 and +1 and Taunt. Good defensive card. We'll see how it goes in the core set. Then you have your Captain Greenskin, your legendary way to buff your weapon. So you could play like your Wrench Caliber for Bomb Warrior, and then be able to buff your weapon +1/+1. Though now you also have Dr. Krasinov, which does the same thing, but the minion has Rush. But this is a neutral, so has always been decent. Patience Manipulator is going to be better in Classic format than anything else because there was so little ways to get extra value from a single card. Being able to copy a minion's effect is going to be powerful in Classic. Harrison Jones for Classic, for control decks to draw extra cards and be that weapon removal. Harrison Jones has always been a good card for that type of thing. For OK cards, we have Abomination. I'd say this is okay only because of its combo potential. You can have some crazy wild combos of Abomination. For this to endlessly die and deal 2 damage to all characters is one of the funniest things. So that's why Abomination is there. Spiteful Smith, your weapon has +2 attack while this is damaged. Nothing particularly special on a minion, but something interesting. Another option for buffing your weapon. Stampeding Kodo, better in Classic, I'd say. Being able to 2-for-1, like just remove an opponent's small minion. Stranglethorn Tiger, 5 mana 5/5 with stealth. And a Beast, this could definitely be okay. It's not the best card, but it is decent stats for 5 mana. For Classic format anyway. Venture Co Mercenary, I'd say this is only okay for Classic. Just the big stats allows you to maybe stick this on the board for a couple extra turns, but the downside can sometimes be too much for Wild, and you just don't run this. It would just be a 2. So we have Silverhand Knight, 6/6 worth of stats across 2 minions. It's almost passable. Scar Crusader will be better in Classic format, but as a 3 mana 3/1 being power crit by many other cards in other formats, no, not good. Fang Creeper, 3 mana 3/6 taunt. Warrior has a 3/6 taunt called Direhorn something, and that has extra benefits. And this is a pretty underwhelming taunt. Tinkmaster Overspark, tech transform card, but it's very inconsistent. It's created a lot of a potentially crazy good moments where you transform your big opponent's minion into a 1/1, or instead in the reverse, you have your opponent's minion that's small and it transforms it into a 5/5. Yeah, you don't want to run this if you want to be competitive, but it is a fun card. Ancient Brewmaster, the more expensive of the Brewmasters. I would just run Youthful Brewmaster if you really wanted that sort of thing. Ancient Mage, enables a couple of like spell damage decks, really niche decks though. You have plenty of other ways these days to spell damage stack. So 4 mana 2/5 is nothing great. And the 1-star cards, Tauren Warrior, Jesus. Just like Amani Berserker is the same thing, right? But it's a 2 mana and it doesn't have taunt. And taunt is irrelevant at this sort of stat line and mana cost. Ceramel Farseer, very underwhelming minion with Wind Fury. You're paying 1 extra mana for Wind Fury for 2/3. Mogashan Warden, maybe you think the high health is good, but the 1 attack is really hurting this card. If you really wanted to have a high health minion to buff with like Inner Fire, you can try Unpowered Steambot that has 9 health. Silvermoon Guardian, the 4 mana 3/3 probably be okay at 3 mana, but at 4 mana, this is underwhelming. So, 4th page, the last page of neutrals, you have Gadgetzan Auctioneer, 5 mana in the classic format. This is going to be a key card for any combo deck that likes to draw, and it's really fun. He has the best deals. Malagos, yeah, this is basically one of those combo win conditions, especially for classic. In Wild, it is also pretty good to keep, but the ways to enable Mally may be a bit more involved. But he is the spell damage minion. Has always been good for that sort of thing. And Alex Straza, key control, staple legendary, I'd say almost. Instead of heroes remaining health to 15, we do have the new Alex Straza, but it's not quite as definitively as being able to deal 15 damage to your opponent's face or heal yourself up a lot. In Classic, it's going to be a key card because Freeze Mage uses it. So 4, Sea Giant. Sea Giant's always been decent. Giant for like zoo decks or like swarm style decks, but in more recent years, Flesh Giant has almost taken that role in standard. There's also Mountain Giant and Molten Giant, but Sea Giant is what I would say is still a good card. And Sunwalker is only a good card, I'd say, in classic format. That Taunt and Divine Shield at 6 mana, it can be quite good. At 3 points, we have Argent Commander. While it doesn't have the most attack for a 6 mana minion that has charge, being you have Divine Shield allows it to stick on the board for a little bit. And then Can will be getting buffed to a 5/5, being a sticky minion. They used to see a lot of play, but not so much more recently, but I could see this still being good in Classic. Baron Geddon is going to get buffed to a 7/7. It will still be 7/5 in Classic though. This would synergize with, let's say, Frostlich Jaina being able to lifesteal with that 2 damage to all other characters at the end of your turn. Being at 7 mana makes it a lot harder to remove. I could see this being almost a 4-point card for any control deck. Ysera. Okay, so the thing with Ysera is that her dream cards are getting changed, I believe, for Wild. You won't be able to use Ysera Awakens to deal 5 face damage, as well as 5 damage clear the board. And it will cost 3 mana, which is more expensive. Dream will no longer cost 0, it will cost 1, and returns an enemy minion to your opponent's hand instead of being your own minion. So it's basically a 1 mana sap. Nightmare gives a minion +4/+4 instead of +5/+5. And Laughing Sister will be a 2 mana, so that's actually a buff. But the other cards are a nerf. So that is kind of disappointing. But in Classic, this has always been a staple late game legendary along with Alex Straza for control decks. Just the value it generates. And it's much harder to remove in Classic format. So I'd see this being okay to good. Then you have a whole bunch of niche, casual, or meme cards. So Frost Elemental, I remember playing this as a new player. Thought it was okay for the freeze stats, but 5/5 for stats for 6 mana, nothing particularly special. Hogger, endless 2/2 taunt minions for value, but if Hogger gets removed, that's the end of that. For 4/4 in stats is not special. You have Wind Fury Harpy, a niche pick for any deck that wants Wind Fury, for example, like Corpse Taker, but These days you have Gyrocopter instead of Windfury Harpy, and so I'd say this wouldn't be good in classic format either. Xavius or Illidan, it'll be Illidan in the classic format, being basically a more expensive version of Violet Teacher, but it's at 6 mana, so I wouldn't say this is that particularly good. Ravenholt Assassin, 7 mana 7/5 with stealth, pretty expensive for that sort of thing. I wouldn't say this is good. Gruul for the memes, and it grows +1/+1 at the end of each turn. But it's just stats. It doesn't do anything turn you play it. So there are plenty of other cards which are not legendaries that are better or more versatile than Gruul, but you can't beat the Gruul sometimes. And Onyxia, late game token generator, summon 1/1 whelps, but you have new Onyxia, so there's almost no reason to have old Onyxia. And even in classic format, it's not the best finisher or late game value, so that's only 2 points there. And Nozdormu, 9 mana 8/8, that is a meme effect, not really that valuable. So very memey card. So let's go to the neutral cards that were in the Hall of Fame and are now going back into the classic packs and will be part of Wild and Classic format. And there are some key cards here. You have Acolyte of Pain and Collite Oracle. Collite Oracle, key card for any mill deck. Each player draws 2 cards. You just battle cry this. You can even double the battle cry with Bran, draw your opponent lots of cards, and mill them. This is the key card. You always keep this. Even if you're not playing a mill deck, this card is still useful. Acolyte of Pain, similar thing, but instead of just battle cry, draw 2 cards, you can just damage this Acolyte and draw cards. Many ways to enable this effect, and was probably why they were removed to the Hall of Fame in the first place, being neutral card draw. You have Leroy Jenkins as a staple aggro aggressive finisher, will be 4 mana in classic format. Any aggressive deck Leroy Jenkins is an option, which is why it's 5 points. Molten Giant, especially potent in Warlock, being able to damage themselves quickly to get down to 10 health to be able to play these for free. Paladin can also use it with the Carl. Any class getting to late game with their low health and having a Molten Giant can be a surprise. So this is a good keep. Then you have Mountain Giant. Mountain Giant is along the same lines as Molten Giant, perhaps even more so, but it is harder to get this card down to 0 or 1. Usually playing this for 4 on turn 4 as like a Warlock, for example, if you're drawing cards, which used to be a pretty powerful play, but maybe not so much anymore. Though we'll see with Mage getting Conjurer's Calling back to 3 mana, this could still be a key card for Mage. We have Spellbreaker, Neutral Silence. I'd say this is always a good tech option. If you're facing, for example, Big Priest or other big decks in Classic, always a good option, but maybe Ironbeak Owl is a cheaper option because it will be 2 mana. Then you have Sylvanas and Ragnaros, the first 2 classic legendaries that were Hall of Famed in 2017. It was basically Sylvanas was that 6 mana card you wanted that had a good or powerful effect of taking control of random enemy minion when she dies. Sylvanas, when played, always made your opponent rethink their turn as to how to play around it. So that is why Sylvanas has always been a decent legendary. And Death Rattle synergies, there are many Death Rattle synergies in Wild, so Sylvanas is part of that. Ragnaros, iconic character from the Warcraft universe, has appeared across many different cards. 8 damage to a random enemy has appeared as hero powers in several cards. This would be like the late game legendary that always dealt some powerful effect. 8 damage can go face, 8 damage can remove a minion. And even if you're able to copy it onto the board, multiple on the board, which you're sometimes able to do, that can be pretty fun and game ending. For the 3-point cards, We have Mind Control Tech. This card has been pretty polarizing in the past. For example, like just the random nature of control of one of your opponent's minions. You could low roll and get a small minion and feel bad, or you could get a big minion and just laugh and just potentially be a game winning swing. Or you could still lose, but it would be a pretty crazy effect. Very good against aggressive decks. Azure Drake. Azure Drake would be almost like a 4 or 5-star card in Classic, but otherwise, over the years, a 4/4 dragon for 5 mana that draws a card is less of a universally good card, but being able to have that on board with spell damage as a small side benefit is still an okay. So we'll see how good this card would be in Classic. Old Mokai would be that charge finisher for Murloc decks. You can earn this by owning all the Classic Murlocs. For 2 points, you have Captain's Parrot, sort of a tech option for pirate decks, but never really that powerful, being a 1/1 for 2 mana. And then we have a couple of promo legendaries. These two, the original Elite Tauren Chieftain, or ETC, and Gelber Mechator. Both fun cards because of these Power Chord card from ETC and Autumn Invention. Fun effects, but they're pretty underpowered these days, as they are very old cards. These two have always just been more like collector's cards to play for fun. So we have the cards that are later added to Classic after the older cards got moved to Hall of Fame. These are new cards that were introduced, and after rotation, they will be craftable. They will be craftable, but they won't be able to be opened in the Classic packs. And as you can see, half of them are going to be in the core sets. We have some OK cards. So the OK cards would be Arcane Devourer, going to be buffed to a 4/8, so having it more health, sticking on the board and casting a spell, this could be good. Or it could just be an option and nothing special. High Inquisitor Y-Main is getting buffed to a 6 mana card, but the stats will be a 5/7. So we'll see, like, being at 6 mana, if it allows some more freedom or flexibility in being able to play cards that summon minions that can die this turn. Say, for example, I don't know, you play the summon minions that give rush in like Demon Hunter. So we'll see how that goes. SI7 Infiltrator, so tech option, still going to be in the core set of destroying a random enemy secret as a neutral card. Not too bad, but never been like a top tier card or anything. Brightwing, that's a little fun card, being able to add any random legendary minion to your hand as a 3 mana 3/2 and a dragon. It's one of the few 3 mana dragons in Hearthstone, so it would actually like slot in just fine in your dragon deck, and now you get to use her for free. We have Shadowword Ruin as a board clear for like threatening minions with 5 or more attack, and being the core set, I'd see this being an okay card, but there are plenty more commonly run cards, so I could see this being as a one-off. Natalie Celine, a 8 mana destroy minion. You also gain its health, so Natalie Celine becomes a decent stat minion, like an 8/7 or 8/8, 8/9. People ended up not really running this in competitive decks because it was a little bit not quite that versatile. I don't know. I did used to run it, but like I didn't think it was like that particularly special. It's not terrible by any means. Speaking of the rest of the cards, none of them are very spectacular. We have Scarlet Subjugator, give any minion -2 attack until your next turn. The problem is it Priest, are you really sticking stuff onto the board and trading? Having this card in your deck kind of is not very much value going on with this in Priest. Call to Run Chaplain. So like, are you trying to like buff up your minions with more health? Like, it's only a +2. Cabal Talon Priest is probably just better if you want to run that. Bringing a 2/3, it's alright. Like, you can just run Beaming Psychic if you care about giving your friendly minion +2 health, and that's 1 mana. That's a big difference, 1 mana from 1 to 2. Gift of the Wild, 8 mana, pretty expensive for a Druid spell to just give your minions +2/+2 in taunt. What you can give your minions +1/+1 for 1 mana. Blessing of the Ancients is a spell you can play for 6 mana total to buff your minions up the same thing. Maybe if you cheat this out for 0 mana or something with like, well, you can't even do it anymore with Keltas. But say that you could do that, is that even a good card? You don't even need this as your key strategy, especially when Survival of the Fittest exists at 10 mana as an epic. Tome of Intellect, add a random mage spell to your hand. Can be good for new players to learn spells. You don't know what you're going to get. Call the Void, add a random demon to your hand. Similar thing. You get any random demon to have. Pilfer, add a random card from another class to your hand. They are more efficient rogue spells that add cards from another class, known as Burgle cards. You have Clever Disguise, which is the 2 mana version that adds 2 cards from another class to your hand. So Pilfer doesn't get run because Clever Disguise is just more efficient as a single card. Siegebreaker, 7 mana 5/8. Your other demons have +1 attack. This +1 attack to demons is almost irrelevant in this sort of expensive demon. Even like if it was cheaper, we even had like a 4 mana demon that gave minions +1 attack, and that's like more like a very casual card. And then you have Righteousness, 5 mana Divine Shield. So if you don't have minions, 5 mana does not much. You have cheaper options to give your minions Divine Shields. And then Baron's Stable Hand, summon a random beast. Well, even looking at the core set for beasts, there are a lot of small statted beasts. So I don't see this even being even good in the core set for standard. Maybe you could high roll. We'll see. So here are the beasts that are going to be in core set for standard. And as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like 8 out of the 14 beasts are 2, 3 or smaller. You only have like 4 really good ones, and then you have Bear Shark, which is like okay to get. So most of the time, you're not really getting much from Baron's Stable Hand. It could be, just a nice casual card to have. So where is Demon Hunter? You may be asking. Demon Hunter is not in the classic set. Demon Hunter was first introduced with the Demon Hunter Initiate set at the start of Ashes of Outland, the first expansion of 2020. So Demon Hunter will not be in the classic format. So how about my basic cards? Well, your basic cards, you get to keep them, but they're not craftable or disenchantable. There's a little bit more on this in my first video on the core set and classic format. If you watch this video to the end, I thank you. I almost didn't release this video, but I felt I had to get a review of the classic set out there, as most players have a classic collection, but they're not the most informed on the upcoming changes to it and the classic format. The video is quite long, so I did my best to cut it down, but the classic set is a big one. I had a lot of fun making this video, but I do wish it took less time. I had to make a lot of cuts around all the stuttering and pausing I was making while speaking, and getting icons and creating graphics like the rating frames. Hopefully everything is like, I've got everything set up, so for future videos, the process should be a lot quicker. I'll just keep trying to improve on that every time. Well, anyway, we've got new Forge in the Barrens cards being revealed over the next couple of days. So there'll be some new exciting stuff to look at. Thank you, and I'll see you in another of my videos. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, the discussion, or just the ideas I talked about, go ahead and leave a like, and maybe you can subscribe so you know when I release videos like this in the future.